The strange thing about November 2025 was that no one expected the country to shift the way it did. It started quietly, almost invisibly, like a breeze moving through a crowded room. People who usually ended their nights exhausted and disconnected suddenly found themselves wide awake at 1 in the morning, sitting up in bed with the blue glow of their screens reflecting in their tired eyes. Something had changed. Something had pulled them in. And before long, millions across the United States were watching the same stories, gasping at the same twists, and feeling the same uneasy heaviness settle in their chests. A new wave of true crime had arrived. And it was darker, more emotional, and more disturbingly real than anything in years. It began with a documentary no one saw coming. Who Hired the Hitman dropped without warning, and within hours, viewers were texting their friends, whispering at work, messaging strangers online, unable to process what they'd just watched. The story didn't open with a dramatic chase or a dramatic confession. It opened with a man who looked like anyone else. A father who coached soccer games, a husband who made pancakes on Sunday mornings. The kind of neighbor who waved as you drove by. The kind of man you trusted without thinking. But behind his gentle smile was a life built on lies so carefully layered that even the investigators, who eventually unraveled them, said they had never seen deception so polished. Every episode stripped away a piece of his mask. A hidden relationship. A secret bank account. A forged insurance document. A web of manipulation so dense it made viewers question how well they knew the people around them. But the moment that broke everyone came when the documentary revealed who actually hired the hitman. Truth stunned the nation. It wasn't who anyone suspected, and the betrayal was so deep, so sudden, that people sat in silence, replaying the scene again and again. It didn't feel like entertainment. It felt like heartbreak, like witnessing the destruction of trust in its purest form. And then, before the country could catch its breath, another series landed. Killer Grannies, a title that seemed almost comedic until the first episode made viewers swallow hard and realize they were about to go somewhere they didn't expect. At first, it felt impossible. These were elderly women, gentle voices, soft hands, wrinkled smiles, the kind of grandmothers who baked pies and crocheted blankets. But each story revealed a hidden life, anger buried for decades, loneliness that hardened into something sharp, trauma that had never been acknowledged or healed. Some killed for money. Some killed for revenge. Some killed because the people around them never bothered to see their pain until it was too late. The series didn't mock them or sensationalize them. It mourned them. And in that mourning, viewers found themselves connecting with these women in ways they didn't expect. It made people uncomfortable. It made them emotional. And most of all, it made them think. What happens to a person whose pain goes unheard for a lifetime? How much suffering does it take to turn a grandmother into a killer? Those questions lingered in living rooms long after the episodes ended. Just as the emotional weight of that series settled in, Hulu detonated another bomb. Death by Fame Season 3. The show had always been popular, but this season hit differently. It peeled away the glimmering surface of celebrity life and exposed the dark edges beneath it: obsession, jealousy, parasocial relationships that grew into something monstrous. Stories of influencers followed by people they didn't even know existed. Stories of young actors whose closest friends turned into their greatest threats. Stories of fans whose admiration curdled into dangerous fantasy. The most terrifying part wasn't the crimes. It was the closeness. These weren't distant, glamorous figures. They were people who lived online, who shared their mornings, their dinners, their smiles. They felt familiar. And the idea that someone could be watching you, studying you, building a version of you in their head, that struck a nerve deeper than anyone expected. Viewers didn't finish episodes feeling entertained. They felt exposed. And then came the documentary that broke everyone. Unknown number, the High School Catfish. It began with a simple text message. An unknown number, a friendly hello. Something every teenager in America had received at least once, but the story unfolded slowly, painfully, showing how a lonely teenager was pulled into the emotional grip of someone who didn't exist. What started as harmless conversation turned into manipulation. What turned into manipulation became control. And what became control ended in tragedy. Interviews with family members shattered viewers. The raw grief. The quiet guilt. The desperate wish that someone had noticed earlier. It was almost unbearable to watch. Teachers cried on camera. Classmates admitted they ignored signs. Parents broke down while describing the moment they realized something was wrong. The pain was so real, so human, that social media erupted with stories from people who had their own encounters with catfishers, bullies, and digital predators. The documentary didn't just trend, it became a nationwide conversation about safety, mental health, and how easily darkness could slip through a phone screen. People sat their kids down to talk. Schools held emergency assemblies. Families stayed up late together, watching, processing, grieving. By the end of the month, Americans weren't simply watching true crime, they were living in its emotional shadow. These shows weren't about faraway killers or historical crimes. They were about ordinary people, families that looked like ours, schools that looked like ours, moments that could happen to anyone. Crimes that grew not out of mystery, but out of everyday life. That was what made this wave different. It wasn't about monsters hiding in the dark. It was about the monsters we never see until it's too late. It was about trust misplaced, pain ignored, and danger disguised as normalcy. Viewers kept coming back not just because the stories were gripping, but because they were frighteningly relatable. Because every episode made them ask, could this happen to me? Could this happen to someone I love? This wasn't just the rise of new true crime. It was a mirror held up to society, revealing the fractures we try so hard to ignore. And as America continued watching, crying, debating, and analyzing, one truth became clear: these stories weren't just entertainment. They were warnings, reminders, and emotional journeys into the darkest parts of human nature. And viewers, no matter how shaken they felt, couldn't look away.